Hey, I'm back from WordCamp. What's it like to be surrounded by experts? Hey, I thought it'd be fun to use that intro today because there was a lot of that going on in the last week or so in Maryland. I went to WordCamp US, and it was a phenomenal event. So for me, this was my third WordCamp. I went to WordCamp US in San Diego last year. I went to WordCamp Phoenix, and I volunteered on the team there. And then I went to WordCamp this time without a booth to represent. We went and kind of just did the social networking, mingling kind of setup. And so I've got three very different WordCamp experiences, but I wanted to share with you kind of the impact that WordCamp in person did for me as, a solopreneur, professional person. Now I say solopreneur. Now I was there representing Lifter LMS. Lifter LMS, compensates me, reimburses me for travel and takes care of me and meals. And I represent Lifter LMS when I am at WordCamp. So someone has a question about e-learning, I'm on point. Someone has a question about an add-on, I'm on point. Someone wants to say, who are you and what do you do? I say, I'm Kurt Van Anen. I have a small agency, but I also represent Lifter LMS, right? So I want to be super clear about what that setup is and how that looks, how that feels, that kind of thing. So when I was at WordCamp, I had three very separate experiences. Now, if you're getting a notification that I've gone live and you're joining me here, feel free to jump in with comments or questions, concerns, introduce yourself. If you have never liked, commented, or shared before during a Mañana No Mas presentation, I encourage you to do so. And I might just cover exactly why here in just a little bit. But I was super excited to go to this WordCamp. When I went to the one in San Diego, it was the first WordCamp that I had ever been to. So when you take a look at, from that perspective, I didn't know the people, I didn't know the founders, I didn't know, the managers of these plugin companies and hosting companies and things like that. Now, this is where the generosity of Chris and Thomas really came into play. That the two owners of Lifter LMS last year, when I went to San Diego, they were in San Diego with us. Everyone knew Chris and Thomas. And Chris and Thomas very generously basically drugged me around the event and introduced me to everybody that they spoke to. Their openness, their generosity in that regard was unmatched. So I met a lot of people that I wouldn't have normally have met. And I got access to a lot of people that I wouldn't normally have gotten access to. You might talk to a sales rep or a customer service rep or something like that, at my level of the game. But Chris and Thomas were like, oh, did you meet the founder of so-and-so or the guy that coded this tool that you use all the time? And that was really, really cool. So when I left San Diego, I was completely fired up. I started working out with, WordPress meetup groups. I did a couple of public talks with some WordPress meetup groups, online, helped host their Zoom calls and stuff like that. And then I signed up for WordCamp Phoenix to help there as a volunteer. Again, I went in, I was representing Lifter LMS. Mañana No Mas is, kind of always there because that's my company, right? So I run Mañana No Mas. And volunteering gave me a different perspective of WordCamp because as I worked as a volunteer, I was meeting and greeting people, meeting and greeting people, giving out ID cards, shaking hands, showing people where things were, helping with some of the public talks that were given, doing the timer thing, the microphone thing, making sure people got their chairs or got bottled water or whatever. The volunteer thing was completely awesome because it gave me, again, I'm going back to access. So it goes to, the access of being able to meet and greet and interact with people at a scale that maybe you normally wouldn't get to interact with. But it also came from a position of service and giving back. I'm a WordPress implementer. I'm not a developer. So I'm not someone that can jump into the back of the code and, tear this whole thing up and give you something completely custom. And, I want this to go over here and that to go over there. And when someone submits this form, there are people that are really skilled in that regard. I'm more of like a problem solver, consultant, and an implementer, someone that builds the site to meet your use case needs. And so for me, it was really cool to get that perspective, that access, and to get in at that level and be able to communicate with people that, quite honestly, fill the gap that I don't have. And I see some extra folks signing in, so I'll say it again. If you have any comments, questions, just want to introduce yourself. I would love to see from you or interact with you here. So feel free to jump in on comments and I'll see those pop up. The other thing that really blew me away about my different WordCamp interactions, and I'll get to this one right now, and that was WordCamp number 3 for me. WordCamp US. Biggest WordCamp US ever. More people showed up than ever. It was at this place called the Gaylord in Maryland, real close to Washington, D.C. Giant, wonderful, huge facility, and tons and tons and tons of people. So that part was cool. Now, I told you San Diego was my first WordCamp, and Phoenix was my second. This was my third. I walked in the first day that the sponsor floor was open. The sponsor floor is where they have different booths and presentations for different companies and stuff like that. And I walked in and immediately heard, "Hey, Kurt, hey, Kurt, hey, Kurt." People are waving. The Rocket.net guys are waving. The guys at Bluehost are waving. "Hey, Kurt, good to see you." Adam Silver was there. Adam Silver typically pops into these comments, so we might see or hear from him during this little presentation. But, Adam Silver was there. I got to see him, connect with him, shake his hand. Lots of folks get hugs. Thomas was there. Thomas is no longer on the Lifter LMS team. So we've got 2 new investors. Thomas has left and gone to do something else. But Thomas was there. And he was a coworker. I worked for him, but I considered him a coworker. It was great to see him, get that hug in, that high five, smiles, share a cup of coffee. I mean, that was just awesome. Now, you heard me say, if you're in here, go ahead and hit a comment, right? Comment, like, share, do something, introduce yourself, let me know who you are. This is why. I am at the bar. Yeah, where are you going to find Kurt? You're going to find Kurt at the bar. So I was at the bar. I'm sitting there with Spencer Foreman. If you've seen me on WP Tonic or you see me on Lifter LMS, I'm sure there's an opportunity that you may have seen me interact or talk about Spencer before. Spencer's very well known in the WordPress space. So I'm sitting there having a nice adult beverage with Spencer, and guy comes up to the table and he says, "Hey, I just want to introduce myself." And I'm like, well, obviously he's here to see Spencer, right? And he goes, "I listen to you all the time. It's cool to meet you, Mañana No Mas." And, it's only happened a few times, but it still hits me weird when someone calls me Mañana No Mas Kurt, or Kurt from Mañana No Mas, or the Mañana No Mas guy. Now, I realize I am the Mañana No Mas guy, but it's just weird when somebody, signs in and comes up to you and says, "Hey, you're the Mañana No Mas guy. I've been listening to you forever." Now, take this one step further. I'm at the Smithsonian Natural History Museum of Natural History, Smithsonian Museum of Natural History. The whole place was, not the whole place, part of the place was reserved just for WordCamp. So there's a bunch of us in there. Emily Hunkler is there from GoWP. I think she's brilliant. And I'd seen her earlier at the event, and I saw her and we wave and smile, and I go up and, exchange pleasantries. But she's talking to a well-versed young man who's there, and he goes, "Oh man," he says, "it's so cool to see you." And I was like, "It is?" Because I have no idea who this gentleman is. Young guy, right? Really bright, obviously bright, hanging out with Emily, works with Emily at a certain scale in another department. And Emily goes, "Oh yeah, this is Kurt. Kurt, this is, gosh, I probably shouldn't say his name. I'm not going to say his name." So she goes, "This is so-and-so." And I'm like, "Hey, nice to meet you." And he goes, "Oh man, it's so cool to meet you. I've been listening to you forever. You guys are great." And what he's talking about is, me and Will Middleton from Lifter LMS, we do a weekly pre-sales call where we basically go online in a situation like this, like StreamYard, And we let people come and ask their questions, or pre-sales questions, or how do I do this, or how do I do that, or anything like that. And so we do screen shares, we answer the questions, right? It's like a pre-sales thing. And we just try and help people find success in the e-learning niche as a course creator. And this young man just goes off. But what he said to me, it hit me on such a level that I was like, how often is this going to happen? Now, I told you the gentleman came up to me at the bar when I was with Spencer, and he said, "Oh, I've been listening for a long time, man. I love your stuff. Mañana no Mas is awesome. I learned a lot from you, blah, blah." I look at his name tag, I stand up, I handshake him, because you're not supposed to shake a man's hand when you're sitting down. And so I shake his hand, and I'm just struck at, I don't know who he is. So he's a long-time listener, right? Hey, long-time listener, first-time caller. Have no idea who he is. And that happened to me multiple times at WordCamp. When I was at the Smithsonian, this young man says, and I kid you not, because I'm a little blown away by, especially by his age, because I'm like, I'm 56 years old, man. I can't be that funny to everybody. But he goes, "Man, I listen to you guys all the time. You guys are hilarious." And I'm like, "Hilarious?" And he's like, "I love the show." And I'm like, "The show? What is he talking about with the show?" And then I figured out through asking questions that he was talking about the pre-sales call. And he was calling it a show. And what he does is he actually gets the notification that we're going to be online. He signs in and he sets it as background, like on another monitor, speaker, headphones, whatever. And he's working, at the office, but he is listening to us in the background for entertainment. And I'm just struck by, so it makes me think, what is the influence that we have on others? What is the impact that we have on others that we're not even aware of? Like, it's one thing when you have a sales call and someone says, "Yeah, I'll have you make my website for $8,000, and you make the website. Like, that's confirmation, right? I'm going to provide a service. You're going to buy the service. You're happy with the service. I get a referral. I get a recommendation. I get rinse and repeat, right? And you're building your business. But when you're in this space and you're trying to be an influencer of some type, right? Obviously, I wouldn't be making these lives, so I wasn't trying to be influencing. And people are giving me this feedback at this event over and over and over. "Hey, I watch the show all the time. You guys are great. You're awesome. I love Mañana no Mas. I love Lifter LMS. Hey, I've been watching you on WP Tonic," because I'm a co-host on the WP Tonic show. So, "Hey, I've been listening to you on WP Tonic. You guys are awesome. That subject you guys had last Thursday was great. Hey, I watched your interview with Jason Cohen. Is that guy as smart as everyone says he is?" Like, it just kept happening. The other thing that kept happening, and I entitled this live, "Surrounded by Experts, the Mental Shift." Okay? I'm trying to explain in a way that makes sense to someone who's not in my head what the mental shift is. So one is, keep doing the work. Like, when I get down on myself and I think nobody's paying attention, or nobody's watching, or there's no likes, there's no shares, I'm not getting the dopamine hit from social, like, I got to remind myself that there are tons of people getting input, getting information, getting something from the effort that's being done here, which makes it worth it, If you're adding value to others, it makes it worth it. So there's that. That's one, right? So one mental shift is, don't give up, keep pumping the pump, keep doing what you do, keep trying to be a leader in the space, voice your truth, right? All those things. So when that is happening, that's one mental shift. The other mental shift is this, and some people would say maybe it's a residual effect of imposter syndrome or something like that. I don't want to go down these weird, like, I'm going to diagnose people kind of pathways. I just want to address my perception as things are coming at me. Multiple people, really smart people. Like, I want to put this in the right perspective. You might be in a business networking group, and there might be one or two shining stars in that group that you really look up to. Okay. Now imagine having a conversation with those one or two people, and they start asking you open-ended questions, almost like if you were a coach or consultant, you would ask your client. okay? But you're doing this over an adult beverage, or you're sitting down at a break having coffee between a couple of talks, whatever, right? You're getting that one-on-one valuable time with someone that you think is a rock star, okay? And then that rock star asks you some open-ended questions and then point blank just says, why aren't you exploiting this, and this as part of your offer? Why aren't you monetizing this, and this as part of your business model? You know, I got to tell you, and I'm just being transparent, when you're used to just trying to be nice and add value to people and be valuable, right? And you're just trying to do what you say is the right thing. I just want to do the right thing. I just want to help people. When you're focused on that and you build up some skills and you get pretty good at it, you have to recognize that there's an opportunity to monetize. There's an opportunity, dare I say, responsibility to monetize that and create revenue for your family and for your obligations. And so multiple times over this last week, people that I really put, kind of high on my list of being smart and brilliant people were like, dude, why you need to optimize this, and this. For instance, I'm going to give you one use case that's pretty easy to talk about, and that is the Power Sport Academy. I have the Power Sport Academy project where I started offering training to dealers. I mean, a year's worth of training for as low as $1,500. And none of the dealers were buying the training. And then I did a proof of concept with a handful of dealers. The feedback was, dude, no one's going to pay you $1,500 for this because it doesn't appear to be valuable if it's sold at $1,500. Like, you have a lot of content and you have a lot of really good coaching, but nobody's going to write you a check for $1,500 for something because $1,500 makes the implication that the content sucks. It needs to be more expensive. So I moved it up to 10 grand. Guess what? Started selling it, right? When it was $18,000, I started selling it. And now I've increased the offer and I've added a couple of things to it. And right now that is sitting on the internet available for something like $42,000 a year. See, because I had to make the recognition that there was value in what I was offering, and I had to request that value or else people wouldn't perceive the value. Right? And that's really hard to get that product market fit and get that pricing right. And as we grow and expand that project and do other things with it, the price might actually go down through an affiliation with other professionals in the market because I'll be splitting some of the responsibility with other providers and vendors. So there's all kinds of ways to look at how to skin this cat, right? But my thing there is how flattering to get the one-on-one time, face-to-face, undivided, right? Open-ended questions, not consulting for a paycheck, but consulting for the value of just adding value to another human being, right? So I got the benefit of that for a week, surrounded by experts and people that I really admire. And consistently it was, why aren't you monetizing this, and this? Why aren't you optimizing A, B, and C? Got to do the ABC, the 1, 2, 3, the XYZs of life, man. You just got to pound through. And so you're going to start to see a couple of different offers come up through Mañana No Mas and through the Power Sport Academy that are going to be a better reflection of the value, the services that me and my team bring to our clients. I say it all the time on podcasts, but Mañana No Mas is not a web building agency. I mean, websites are a product of our output, right? So websites are a product of our output, but we're not just a website agency. We end up consulting and networking with our clients and working on their business models and working on their user interfaces and user experiences and how they sell their products, how they bundle their products, how they operate their business. We look at standard operating procedures and internal training for their employees and all kinds of things. And so one of the most interesting conversations I had was I was speaking to someone that I consider an expert, someone I consider at the top of the list. And I was explaining how some of my clients aren't very familiar with trends to expect on spreadsheets, and whether they're business to business or direct to consumer, there's certain numbers or certain percentages or certain dare I say, algorithms, right? But there's certain patterns I expect to see in spreadsheets that deal with, expenses and percentage of resources devoted to something and things like that. And as I was having this conversation with this person, now this person had already given me value. Okay. So this is kind of that cool exchange, they look at me and they go, I really don't understand what you're talking about. And to me, it seemed basic, but that's the beauty of being an expert in something, right? Something that's basic to you is complex to someone else. And when you can find someone to make that mental handshake with, it's beautiful, right? So then I was able to say, well, there's just certain things like, let's say I make widgets. So how much does it cost to make a widget? How much do I sell the widget for? What's my cost of goods? What's my delay on supply chain? What's my customer acquisition costs? What's my overall marketing budget divided by customer acquisition cost? So, where's my best avenue for targeted marketing? What's my percentage of wholesale to retail? And all through these things. And I said, so no matter what business it is, if it's business to business, if it's direct to consumer, if it's wholesale, if it's distribution, there are certain trends in the numbers that tend to hold truth. And I like to say things like numbers don't lie, right? So numbers are consistent, numbers don't lie. And as much as I focus on relationship and leadership and communication, I also have to, be a bean counter at the end of the day to make sure that there's value in the things that I'm sharing. And so all of this begins to come all together. Again, WordCamp US, phenomenal experience, surrounded by experts, exposed to winners across the board. Food was phenomenal. The education was phenomenal. The networking was phenomenal. Obviously, I'm still on a high from this trip, and I just flew in yesterday. Got home, yesterday and plowed through. But I just want to if I could make any kind of a statement or an inspiration to you, I'm not saying everybody that watches my live needs to go to WordCamp. That's not it. But if you're a realtor and there is a realtors summit or event or retreat somewhere, and you look at the attendee list and 20% of the people on the list are doing a lot better than you are, get yourself to that event, right? If you are, someone that wants to be a leadership expert, kind of like I did the John Maxwell training. So if you're like, man, I really wish I could take this leadership thing seriously, get to the John Maxwell event, do the training, go to the IMC, pay the $5,000, get the training, get the networking, get face-to-face with people, shake hands, make relationships. I can't stress enough how much I feel that helps contribute to the level of success that I experience and that I will continue to experience. Folks, if I'm going to be honest with you, I started this agency back in 2008. I had a really great client, Ducati motorcycles. They hired me away from myself. And then I ended up putting 10 years into the power sports business. Okay. Now I love my power sports experience. Don't get me wrong. I love that, I was real involved at the corporate level with motorcycles and ATVs and marine engines and cars. And that was super, super cool. But when that came to an end and I had to relaunch my agency, it wasn't like some light switch that I flipped on and I instantly had clients. Okay. So I want you to understand that, you see me live all the time. You see me, live, not daily, but, a few times a week. You see me live on LinkedIn, Facebook, X. You'll see me interacting with other companies. You'll see me, like I told you, WP Engine, WP Tonic, WP Launchifies, Lifter LMS, GoWP, Giver Marketing for the marketing side of my business. So, right there, I just named 6 organizations that I am interacting with and sharing live time with. WordPress meetup groups, these WordCamps, all of this is needed to build that cycle, to build that momentum, to keep things going, and to build a book of business out of it. If I just hung a tile out front and said, Mañana no más, come get your website here, I don't know that many people would show up. So I work really, really hard at this. And I just wanted to kind of point out, when you work that hard and you really dive in, you can find yourself being somewhat overwhelmed just at the overall work of it, the overall energy expenditure to keep pushing. Or sometimes you just get awash in the daily details and you think to yourself, I know something's got to change. I know I got to change the way I present this. I know I have to approach business a different way to meet more new people. That you have those thoughts, but you get stuck in this daily minutia of, deleting spam, replying to emails, setting up, discovery phone calls. And sometimes it is sharing a glass of wine, having that interaction, shaking hands across the table, face to face, smiling at a peer or someone almost at the mentor level, right? And then being able to access them undivided, 20 minutes, half an hour, 45 minutes. Put things in perspective. I know that Spencer Foreman finds value in the time that we share together, okay? But it goes both ways. And I was able to spend hours with Spencer Foreman, not minutes, hours with Spencer Foreman. He introduced me to a gentleman named David Weeks. David Weeks is doing a new thing with public relations in the WordPress space. And how cool is it that I get to be exposed to his new efforts at the very beginning? So as he grows, I also have the opportunity to grow through recommendation and referral. For instance, he'll be helping me get really good podcast guests for the Mañana No Mas podcast. You see, all of this swims together. And so I just want to say, like the title says, if you surround yourself with experts, you're able to put forth a mental shift. We've got to be super careful about ruts. We hear a lot about AI right now. Well, we heard a lot about AI, and then it kind of faded about AI. And then something else will come up and we'll hear a lot about that, and then that'll fade. And we'll get stuck in these cycles of hype, right? You need to find a way to bypass those cycles of hype, focus on what's important, and really have a clear vision of who you are, what you present, and how you're going to move forward. And it's this personal interaction that, to me, is the key. Some folks can get it through Zoom, and I do a lot of Zoom. Oh my God, I live on Zoom. But for me, to have that interaction on the face-to-face, the handshake, the smiles across the table, that to me is all of it. And I told you you'd probably see Adam Silver sign in. There he is. He says, hey, I know you. I told everybody you were having a busy week, buddy. I didn't know if I'd see you or not. Was wonderful seeing you at WordCamp. And the beginning of this broadcast was talking about how wonderful it was to see you at WordCamp. You were the first real person to shout my name there. So, but I ran into customers. I ran into end users. I ran into guys like Adam. I ran into guys that ride motorcycles. We have something in common. I got a picture on social right now. 3 bald dudes with gray beards, in a picture to go say, hey, do we look like we're related? But it's just those moments that create those relationships that allow you to have those discussions that allow you to strongly consider that mental shift. The next challenge when you have these mental shifts is finding the time to take action on the mental shift. If I wasn't super careful, if I didn't make the time to make this live today and really vocalize how I felt about this week's trip and really vocalize about how important it was to get these insights and these interactions with these other professionals and people that I really look up to in the industry, if I didn't stop to do this now, that thought, that feeling could have vacated itself. And then what would happen? I would go back to answering emails, scheduling that next sales call, answering emails, deleting spam, scheduling the next sales call. And then I'd be the Mañana No Mas guy that's just kicking out websites. And as I said earlier, I got a lot of feedback this week that was, how come you're not optimizing A, B, and C as part of your offer? How come you're not monetizing 1, 2, and 3 as part of what you do? And those are the things where I go, product market fit is there, a little tweak on marketing, a little support from the network, and this can 2x, 3x, 5x my business. If I was optimistic like Grant Cardone, I'd be talking about 10x in his book, right? But I think in smaller steps, and I think about how do I just make the best impact on the community and help my family at the same time. Folks, I love you, obviously, or I wouldn't do this all the time. Have yourselves a wonderful, wonderful afternoon, a solid week, as we're starting out a new week here. I'm going to end this with the thank you message from Mañana No Mas. And happy birthday and happy anniversary, right? So that goes out to Mr. Silver's wife for the birthday and anniversary for the marriage, man. He's got a heck of a week in front of him. You guys have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.